human trafficking at an all-time high across the country and across the world. But one nonprofit organization is helping law enforcement agencies fight the good fight and beat the odds on a large scale. That story coming up.
Welcome to The Right to Inspire. Journalist and host Sarah Strackhouse has worked at Fox News, the CW, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner cable stations across the country for more than 10 years and is now focused on telling inspiring stories of those dedicated to making change. She's driving the message home that ultimately you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. You have the right to inspire.
Thanks so much for joining us for The Right to Inspire, because you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change that you want to see in the world. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. She is DeliverFund's Vice President of Advancement, Christi Nabors. Christi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, I just have been so excited for this interview because, not that it's necessarily, an exciting topic, it's probably the wrong word to use, but it really is an important topic, especially in today's society. DeliverFund, if you're not familiar with it, let's show a quick video.
There's a war against our children. Right here. Right now. In America. Human traffickers are hunting our children. They are turning our children into commodities, and our communities are not safe while these traffickers are out there. In 2022, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received more than 19,000 reports of possible child sex trafficking. This is a problem that can affect any household, in any city.
They'll reach out to those girls on social media, and they'll look for that 12, 13, 14-year-old girl who says that she's mad at her dad on social media. And that trafficker looks for that opportunity to start manipulating her, separating her from her friends and separating her from her family by telling her the things that she wants to hear. He gets her to do something that she regrets, and then will use that as blackmail against her in order to get her to do more things, or to get her hooked on narcotics, and then she'll do anything to get the narcotics. At DeliverFund, we started looking at all the different problems and seeing where we could be the most effective. We take our special operations and intelligence capabilities and our technology, we focus them on finding out who the human trafficker is so that we are preventing future victims by eliminating the human trafficker. So to solve the problem of connecting law enforcement and connecting cases, we realized that we could do it the same way that we did with terrorism overseas. We equip, we train, and we advise law enforcement for the fight against human trafficking, specifically equipping them with software. We have our own engineers, and really for the first time in history are building purpose-built software for the fight against human trafficking. The second piece of what we do is we train law enforcement. So it's not enough just to give law enforcement tools and say, go forth and conquer human trafficking. You actually have to give them the training on how to use those tools in the most efficient and effective manner possible.
In my city, there was only 2 officers that were assigned to the Human Trafficking Task Force at the time. And they didn't have the resources or the tools they needed to actually build a case. So I was still living in constant fear. This is when they connected me with DeliverFund. So I only had maybe his first name, the make, model, and color of his car. And that was the information that I was able to give them and the police. So that's why the police were not able to make a case with the little bit of information I had. DeliverFund used that same information and the phone that I had and was able to track him down with the tools and the resources that they have. And they were able to build the case that law enforcement used to charge him. I can honestly say if it wasn't for DeliverFund, I wouldn't be here today because I would still be in fear of my life. I would still be running, and I probably would still be in the sex industry.
At DeliverFund, we believe every life is precious and freedom is a right for all. Our mission is to end human trafficking by empowering law enforcement with the tools and intelligence they need. But we cannot do it alone. Your support can change lives, restore hope, and protect our communities. Visit DeliverFund.org to learn more and take action today. Together, we can make a difference.
So the message is so powerful. And I want to talk about your involvement. How did you find DeliverFund, and what really spoke to you about what the work that they do is?
Yeah, so DeliverFund was founded by former CIA, NSA Homeland Security analysts who hunted terrorists. So they have a counterterrorism approach to hunting human traffickers. We couple that training, we teach law enforcement the same methodologies that they were taught, and couple that with data and technology. So all the data, the online commercial sex ads, those types of things, to provide intelligence, which ultimately turns into evidence for law enforcement, then to prosecute traffickers.
So it's a very specific niche, but I love it. It's really, really interesting. How did you join the company?
Well, Nick called me several years ago and he joined DeliverFund, and I said, no, I'm never working for another nonprofit again.
Okay.
And
here you are.
Yeah. And he just is like, well, we're different. I'm like, well, that's what they all say. And he said, we really are. I was like, well, when he started talking about leveraging technology, because that's a lot of my background.
Yeah.
And as a plan to be sustainable, and it's not always on donors or reliance on that. I was like, okay, you are different.
A little, yeah.
I'll hear more. And so when he really got into the technology bit and really what they're doing, I was like, wow, no one is doing that. Not on the corporate public level, not in nonprofit, like no one is doing it. So it's so cutting edge. It did not exist.
Right.
So I was like, okay, you're right. You're not a typical nonprofit.
Right. Well, and so I want to read a little bit about your background too. So you've been serving DeliverFund as the VP of Advancement since January 2022. Your for-profit executive leadership and nonprofit executive and CEO experience set the foundation for you to be credited with 3 nonprofit turnarounds. So you're increasing programmatic impact and expansion, introducing program delivery into new ecosystems, and creating new revenue generating sustainable pipelines, like you said. And you've been at the forefront of leveraging technology to help companies. So I guess, what kind of technologies is DeliverFund really using to help with, combat the fight of sex trafficking?
Well,
and human trafficking.
Yeah, it's all trafficking, right? So there's, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, all of those things go into trafficking as what how the law calls it. And speaking of technology, I mean, our team, they're so far beyond me at this point. But
that's what you want, right?
Oh yeah, it is really cool.
Yeah.
But they were incorporating, machine learning before that was even a word. Artificial intelligence, we've had it in our systems and our product since before everybody started talking about it, which is really great. Because it's not only it's helped our expansion and help us fight trafficking at the scale, but also with the new improvements of AI that people are just now seeing. With we were talking about ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini. We've been doing that all along. So we've been able to kind of move at the speed of it. So that's been fun to watch.
Yeah.
The technology advancement is allowing us to do things like adding biometric clustering, which the simple word is facial recognition, but it's deeper than that.
Okay.
But when you're thinking about finding a missing person, missing child, and you think of the sex ads that they could be posted in, let's say the girl went missing from Dallas, Texas. Law enforcement is looking for sex ads in Dallas, Texas. Well, she's been moved to Houston. It would take them 4 or 5 days just to look through the sex ads posted in Dallas, and she's already gone.
Right.
So the development that our team is developing with biometric clustering is able to identify and push those images to the top so they can identify, locate, and rescue victims faster.
Well, and it's just so interesting. Law enforcement really has, especially with the defund movement, I mean, they have limited resources. You know, if someone's moved to Houston and they don't have the resources to be searching and putting the manpower into looking at this, your technologies and what you do is so important for them. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship and what it is with those law enforcement agencies?
Oh, wow. This is my favorite topic.
I love it.
So our law enforcement agents all over the country, we trained over 540 something law enforcement folks last year.
Wow.
But we have partnered with a company where we've been able to give access to our data to over 7,500
wow, that's great.
Agencies.
Across the country.
But there's over 18,000 agencies across the country. So in law enforcement, they're siloed. Yeah. So not only are they...
You got a little over a third, right?
They're underfunded.
Yeah.
And they don't have... A lot of them don't have local support. So when we're talking about our law enforcement, they're the hardest working folks. And a lot of the agencies, they don't have human trafficking specific detectives. Sure. A lot of them are in a larger unit that is, it's a homicide, narcotics, guns, and human trafficking.
Wow.
Well, some of these things are much easier to find than other things. Right, like human trafficking. Human trafficking is in plain sight and you've seen it and you don't know it.
Yeah. Whereas if you're walking around and someone's holding a huge gun, you can see that. You can tell.
Right.
Yeah.
And drug deals on, so there's things that are easier. So things that are just, and it's easier to prosecute whenever there's not evidence. So whenever, for instance, a trafficker sells a victim online, just like when you sell something, I always say Facebook Marketplace because,
Yeah.
When you sell it, you take the ad down, right? Same thing with the traffic victim. So they take the ad down. Law enforcement can't use that because it's gone.
Right.
But DeliverFund has that information, that data, so law enforcement
can live forever. Wow.
That's right.
Wow.
And so I think that is one piece. Number one, it's all of the data collection.
Yep.
But providing law enforcement with that extra piece, so they are able to prosecute.
What a truly noble mission, just being able to do that and helping these law enforcement agencies. Can you talk a little bit about, some of we were looking at stats. I know we were talking about stats before, and who knows if these are even, as updated as possible because a lot of times it goes unnoticed or unheard.
It's so hard.
There's the global statistics, according to Reuters, increased in detected victims. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime reported a 25% rise in human trafficking victims in 2022 compared to pre-pandemic. And I saw something, prevalence of modern slavery, 2024, approximately 49 million people are enslaved worldwide. I mean, that number was really shocking to me. And, obviously that's a little bit different just in the US, as of 2021, I understand that about 16,500 human trafficking victims, if that's even an accurate number, that's according to our, OUE rescue. So who knows if those are but even those numbers are huge. And they said that, 50% of them are women and girls, that just.
Yeah. And some of those numbers sound really huge and some of those numbers sound very small just because I get to talk to law enforcement. And
so tell me about your numbers.
Ground.
Yeah.
Well, we know that since the onset of the smartphone, NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has reported that it's an increase over 800%.
Oh my gosh!
Child sex trafficking, and sometimes the numbers may look inflated, but really it could be that there's more law enforcement or investigators that are able to track them and prosecute them. People, so there's a lot that goes with that. We know that, the detected victims increase. There was a 25% increase in trafficking victims. And you were talking about globally as opposed to US, but it's the American dollar.
Yeah.
American men buying American girls with American dollars.
Wow.
That's trafficking in America. it's not a lot of what people think.
Really? So tell
there's
me
a difference between smuggling, right, and people who are smuggled. They are susceptible to being trafficked and labor trafficking or anything, but that's not trafficking. Trafficking is, force, fraud, or coercion, and someone making a profit off of someone else. And it doesn't have to be force, fraud, or coercion. It doesn't have to be money. It could be like they're hungry, or later on they have victims who are addicted to drugs. There was an investigator that we were talking to in Nashville, and they were investigating 4 homicides of what. They were not homicides, overdose. It was fentanyl overdose in Nashville. And he was doing some, investigating. And then with our new partnership with the company Hooster that we've developed a partnership with, they have DeliverFund data in their system. So he started looking and he found, wait, these aren't prostitutes with fentanyl overdose. They're actually trafficking victims. And this is the trafficker, and this is the trafficker's phone number and the trafficker's information. And so they do get them addicted to drugs, right? But they thought they were a prostitute. So the intersectionality and the connection of illicit activity is there. And so law enforcement thinks that they're looking at one thing and it's a whole entirely different thing.
Well, I always think of the movie Taken,
I didn't see it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, it gives me chills every time. Basically the storyline is, and I hope I'm not spoiling it for anyone if they've, never seen it, but, the father, the daughter goes away to Europe. She's, I think, 16, I want to say. And she ends up getting snatched by these guys, an Albanian crew. And they addict them to drugs and then they sell them on the black market in Europe. And, same thing. They were addicted to drugs and they all become prostitutes, but
what looks like a prostitute.
Right. And it's all trafficked women pretty much. So,
but less than 1% of trafficking victims are like snatched.
Really?
So
tell me,
so the snatch and grab thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than being snatched. So yes, most of the victims know they're traffickers. It's and you think about kids with their cell phones and their gaming devices, Discord. It's people having access to your kids online.
Wow.
You will be in the room, you'll be in the kitchen, and there's somebody talking to your kid that you think is another 17-year-old talking to your 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
He's a 25-year-old man. You've talked to him because you've been in the kitchen and they're all talking on their gaming devices.
Right.
You know him as well as she does.
Right.
But she thinks she's in love with him. One day she runs off and that's how it happens. I mean, it's a 12-month grooming process, 18-month grooming process. Traffickers take a lot of time because they know they can make a lot of money. They make $250,000 to $450,000 off one victim per year. And sometimes they're running 12 victims.
Wow.
So they're making a ton of money.
Unbelievable.
So they're going to totally invest in 6 months of flirting with your kid on, Instagram and then the Discord, and they have different platforms that they're all talking on.
That's horrifying. So what, as a parent,
it's
what do you do? What advice do you have for them?
Oh, this is so hard.
Yeah.
And parents, we can be so, proactive when you think, oh, well, I checked her Instagram messages or I'm looking at the TikTok, the DMs. But what I didn't realize until I saw it firsthand is that they will find them on one platform and they'll communicate on multiple platforms. So a parent can't put the whole conversation together. When the kid is being lured off, when the daughter is sharing her parents' address,
her Snapchat location,
they're sharing all these things, but you don't know because you didn't know about the Discord messages, you didn't know about the DMs on TikTok. You were only reading Instagram, or then you look at the text. So you have to almost piece all of the avenues of conversation into one because they're really smart and sneaky, and so they're going on all different platforms to talk to your kid. In 5 seconds, and then they're over here, and It's tough. So being a parent, when you think about it, it's tough.
Yeah, and that can be extremely exhausting.
You don't even
just,
know that
just
they
having
have
to,
it.
just having to try to monitor all of this. What are the conversations that parents should be having with their kids? Because I feel like it's nearly impossible to monitor their every move like that, right? I mean, I have littles, like very, very little, so they're not on those things yet, or having conversations yet. But
traffickers are after, because they will
all
be.
ages.
They will be. What do you tell parents? My daughter's 20 now. And how do you talk to kids? Once a trafficker has their claws,
their hooks in them,
in your kid, there's nothing you can. It's so hard.
So you have to get it before that.
They've been brainwashed. Yeah, they think this man loves them. They will do anything for him, anything. So how do you beat them to that? Just being active in their life. Who are you talking to? And having them ask, questions to them, well, what do you think they do? What do you think he really looks like? I mean, I don't know if there's a right answer. I just know watching this the last 3 years, it's incredibly difficult. I was working an operation with Houston Police Hatra in Houston, and they brought a girl in. So what happened is, they, like you see sting operations on TV?
Yeah.
Okay. We support those operations.
Okay.
Law enforcement does it, all the stuff. But what we help is to provide intelligence prior to that operation, so that when they get there at the operation, they can hit the ground running.
Right.
They don't have to go and do a lot of work to find victims. We've already found where they would be, and we can start calling them in for, the date.
Yeah.
Well, they had a young girl brought in. She was 15 years old, and it was her first date. Wow. First date. So the trafficker brought her in, because usually the trafficker, he doesn't want to take his hands off of, his
product.
His product, right? Because he'll make. So he walks her in. The young girl met the undercover officer. They go up to the hotel room and start, hey, this is what's going on. And she says, well, this is my first date. This was my boyfriend. He asked me to do this. Call the girl's mom. The girl's mom comes up to the hotel where the operation was, and she said, oh, well, the girl's dad was deployed.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I knew she was hanging out with bad people. I just didn't know how bad.
Wow.
So, and these kids are going home at night. They had one instance for a Dallas police detective who was talking to, who found a victim, and then was able to go through the victim's phone, and then found a trafficker. So then she was able to go through the trafficker's phone. And this was here in Dallas. And then she found another underage victim, a 15-year-old, and another underage victim. And they were bringing the parents in and saying, hey,
did you know this was happening?
They were like, we had no clue. Their kid was going home at night. So this is not all the snatch and grab. It's not all, they're locked up in a room with, handcuffs on like you see on TV. That's not what it looks like.
They were going home every night.
Yeah, they go home at night. This is their afternoon thing, hanging out with their boyfriend, or skipping school, or all weekend, right? So, and a lot of them don't, right? Once they run away, I mean, then they've really got their latches. But it starts small. Like, it could be happening in your house, and your kid's coming home, but they have different, you could be looking for expensive gifts that they have, dressing differently, talking different, isolating themselves. I was watching one young victim, and she wasn't allowed to make eye contact. So whenever she would go on family to the family get-togethers, she said, I love being with my family, but I'm not allowed to make eye contact. So she would have to talk down, because eye contact was a big thing, and then she would get beat up by her trafficker. Wow. So it's the smallest things that you wouldn't think of.
Wow. How they get you under their control. That's insane. Well, I mean, so obviously internally, parents need to be aware of who their kids are talking to, try to have those conversations. What about nationally? We have this new administration coming in. What what changes need to be made? Are there changes that can be made? What are you hopeful for?
Yeah. The current administration has had efforts in, victim services and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that everyone is hopeful for, we need policy change, but that takes time.
Sure. What kind of policies?
Oh, there's so many things that if we could unwrap that today, and I wouldn't even know where to start. But at the very beginning, we need to enhance law enforcement's efforts. They need to have proper funding, because if you don't have a detective that's able to hunt a human trafficker and get the information, so they can prosecute,
right? You
leave the trafficker on the street.
You save the kid, but you can't prosecute. Yeah, he'll just do it again.
He'll do it again to another victim, and then you got more victims, right? Yeah. And you already know how much money he's making, so he doesn't really care any fines that could be up against him, right?
Right.
So I was at Alabama. Trafficking is a mandatory life sentence. So
that's great.
Being really, really serious about it.
Why isn't that across the board?
Yeah. It was not very many years ago. It was one state here, and it was only a $250 fine. So if you can imagine how much money they're making, and they pay a $250 ticket, you're like,
I don't care if I get caught.
It's the cost of doing business.
Wow.
So, things need to change, but law enforcement needs support so they can prosecute, so they can remove the trafficker off the street.
Yep.
Otherwise, he keeps making more victims.
Right.
And then we have more victim services, and we need more beds in more places. And the cycle just grows and grows,
right?
Much like it is right now.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked a little bit about, the whole P. Diddy story that blew up. And it's bringing focus, obviously, to a very public thing. But you said something that was pretty profound about the story. So I wanted to let you talk about that.
Yeah, it's P. Diddy's story, the other stories about, very, very famous people who are trafficking. I think that sheds a light. It's awesome that people are talking about it and that it's in the news, right? It's a priority. However, it's also parents, they're letting their guard down. Oh, well, P. Diddy's not going to traffic my kid because they don't know P. Diddy.
Right.
P. Diddy is an example of the trafficker in your neighborhood talking to your kiddo. So those P. Diddy's, the man on the street, are everywhere. He's just got the focus, but there are thousands more out there.
Wow. Well, so how can people support DeliverFund? Is there a struggle that you're up against that you're needing help with? How can people, if they're watching this, they want to get involved, they want to support you guys, what can they do?
There's a lot of ways to support DeliverFund. Obviously, just follow us, follow our social media. You'll see all kinds of things that are coming up. Supporting an operation. So operations, and you can't say, but there is a very large football game that happens usually the end of January.
Okay.
But any type of sporting events, there's increased trafficking.
Yeah.
So we have been supporting large scale events like the one that happens in for the last 5 years.
Okay.
So along with crimes of human trafficking, there's money laundering, there's other fraud and guns and things that happens. So we're working with an organization in the financial crimes piece.
Because as you said, illicit behaviors are interconnected.
Yeah.
I mean, everything comes together. I mean, all of the things,
The money laundering, the narcotics, the trafficking of labor. You'll see labor trafficking happens in front of you in the restaurants that you go and the nail salons that you're in, and you don't know it and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
Other things that DeliverFund does, so along with supporting operations, but we also do training. So we offer training across the country for law enforcement agencies. So if they wanted law enforcement in their area, their community to have this training, that's also, and then also the data. So we offer requests for information. So last year we did 276 RFIs. Well, RFIs, it's like whenever a law enforcement, they've done everything that they can and they just need a little help. So that's increased 25% last year. And then intelligence reports. So we will actually write and do the full intelligence report for the officers so that they can take that to their prosecutors, to the judge, so they get the subpoenas and everything that they need.
Yep.
So we fulfilled 515 intelligence reports last year.
Wow.
But because we're data and tech, our big thing is over 4 billion points of data that we've collected. Now, points of data, that means everything from traffickers' phone numbers, emails, doesn't include the images because we've got over 9 terabytes of just images and videos just last year.
Wow.
But 4 billion points of data on traffickers, that could be their location, because in the ads, they post all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Like
no idea
the cities, the names of the hotels, the whole bit.
Wow.
Like, meet me at my Airbnb or meet me at the Omni.
Wow.
So it's there. And then we've got the phone number associated with it. We've got everything. So that's a lot. So that's the advantage that DeliverFund gives law enforcement.
Oh, that's incredible. And if people, I assume you can donate directly as well, right? So what is the website?
Yeah, it's DeliverFund.org.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and people always think it's the liver, but it's deliver.
Like a delivery.
DeliverFund.org.
Well, you're delivering funds to agencies in the form of technology and support.
And delivering victims out of this life.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, one last question. I wanted to ask, why this mission is so important to you, why you personally like being involved in this. I don't know if that's a weird way to, phrase it, but why? The fight for justice is always something that has been in me, but this is at such a dark scale that I didn't know what I was getting into. The first 6 months that I was tormented, really at night. And after you really dive in, you cannot believe the horror that young women, children, boys, girls live in. You wouldn't believe it. Yeah. And then working operations and being with law enforcement who fight so hard and they're so smart is what drives you, because they're unstoppable. They just need a little more. And when they've got that, it's awesome. So they inspire me, but seeing the dark side of the world also wears on you. Yeah, sure.
But it's the law enforcement they work with every day. They're just incredible.
Yeah. Well, you're fighting you're helping with the fight. So I think that's incredible and inspiring in its own right. So thank you again so much for joining us. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. And of course, all of the information will be in the caption. So if you do want to get involved or donate in some way, of course, we'll have that information for you. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.